Come on.
They're right there!
Let's go. Move, 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 move.
This episode of Choices Not Chances podcast is sponsored by Louisiana Gun Shop, located on Highway 90 West in Broussard, Louisiana, just south of Lafayette. For more information, stay tuned at the end of this episode. This is Choices Not Chances podcast with Ryan and Matt. I'm your co-host, Matthew Charette. Sitting next to me is Ryan Rogers. Ryan?
Hey guys, welcome back. Glad to have you. Choices Not Chances. We got a good one for you today. Again, just as a note, administrative on the side, if you see anything during this episode that needs to be passed on, don't be selfish with the information. Share it out, put it on the platforms, and get these messages out there. This is our attempt at using our platform as a conduit for information passing for both the current pipe hitters that are still going over and waging American resolve on our behalf, and as well as those guys that are transitioning and finding their new roles in their new places. So without further ado, when I was young, I would hear stories of war, from the stories of the greatest generation to the heroes of Vietnam. My father would make subtle recommendations about what a person should say and should not say regarding questions of war, particularly to war veterans, and most particularly at the time, Vietnam War veterans. The heroes of Vietnam came home to unrest and protest. They gave their youth and sanity, and 58,220 men sacrificed the full measure in that place. For the men that fought in Vietnam, I am eternally grateful, and thank you. The Vietnam generation paved the way for my generation of warfighters to get help and establish the Veterans Administration as we know it today. Some of the men from that generation chronicled their war exploits and published them for the rest of the world to know what happened there. This is and was more important than you can imagine. Without written testimony and firsthand accounts of the battlefield, how can we learn from them as a people? One of the more detailed books on the Vietnam conflict is called Battlelines. It was written by Lieutenant Colonel Dave Brown of the USMC and his lovely daughter, Tiffany Brown Holmes. Lieutenant Colonel Brown earned a Silver Star Medal for gallantry in combat, and he was the company commander in Vietnam who took over for company command for Fox Company 2-5 shortly after they cleared Hue City. Following his time in Vietnam, first as an advisor and then as Fox Company's company commander, Brown had a distinguished career in the Marine Corps. Lieutenant Colonel Brown instructed at the U.S. Naval Academy and headed up the Marine Corps procurement budget. Upon retirement, he was a logistics consultant for both the United States Marine Corps and the Navy, and he served as the director of the 2nd Marine Division Association. He's published numerous articles in the Marine Corps Gazette and the Amphibious War Review. He's also authored other books on training, automated information systems, and logistics, as well as some other books directly pertaining to combat and the ways of the fighting man, let's say. Very active in his community, and today we have the distinct pleasure of sitting down with him for a little while and talking about doing kind of a review of Battlelines, looking at the Vietnam conflict, and then having the conversation that spurs from there. So, Dave, Lieutenant Colonel Brown, thank you so much for coming out. It's an honor to have you here, and I'm excited about this conversation. We've been talking about it for a while, so thank you.
Yeah, Ryan, thank you very much, and hello to you too, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here. And you have some questions, or want me to start anywhere, or what?
Yeah, so first, the forum that we usually hold is I like to know where you started. I like to know your upbringing, siblings, parents. Was it single mother or both parents in the household, and religion. As a factor for me. I'm writing another book, as you know, as well, and that's one of the things that some of the main points that I'm taking from key leaders that I know in my life have led and excelled. What was the foundational building blocks in the beginning? And it seems that it's usually the same. And so if we can start there at childhood and just kind of let's chronologically walk through how we got to where we ended up.
Yeah, sure. I'm from Shillington, Pennsylvania, and that's a suburb of Reading in eastern Pennsylvania. And born there back in '39, actually 64 years ago. Yesterday was my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And I have a twin brother.
Okay.
5 minutes older than me. So, at any rate, I grew up with a twin brother. I grew up with a loving mother and father. My dad started his own business, and I was to go into it, but I never did go into it. But for, I would say, the summers in college, and then as a reserve officer, I got out, joined the reserves, and for my own sake, but worked for him for almost 9 months. But after 3 months when I was out, my first 3 years, my battalion, the 1st Battalion, 4th Marines, left Hawaii and went to Vietnam, and they went to Da Nang. And there I was, stuck in Pennsylvania selling candy. God, get me back. I actually went to summer camp with the reserves, and I was a forward observer, and we went to Fort Sill, so that boned up my artillery skills, my ability to call in artillery, whatever else. Going back, I had a sister, and she's 3 years younger than I am. You got to know when you're a twin. I don't know if you two have ever been a twin, but when you have a twin brother, he's a little bit smaller than me, but you wrestle all the time and you fight all the time. I know I was regaling some of these things on the phone with him, wishing him happy birthday yesterday, and I can recall vividly. We all have our own memories of our own brothers, and they're slightly a bit different. But I remember one time I'm feeling really macho. Now we're dealing with probably a 5th grader with a BB gun. Boom, got him like that. I'll get you. And then I couldn't take it anymore. I said, "Hey, okay, here's my shirt. Go ahead, shoot me." Yeah, so he shot me back. So, but we wrestled all the time, and those kind of things just kind of worked out. And we were naturally inclined to do sports. Mm-hmm. So we started competitive swimming in the YMCA playing, I'd say in 4th grade through 7th grade or 8th grade. And then Doug became a very champion swimmer, went on to a scholarship to Oklahoma. And I stayed with football and lacrosse in college. And so I stayed with the kind of aggressive sports. Mm-hmm. And I love doing those type of things. So now that you kind of know that, there's this feeling of aggression inside of you. Mm-hmm. And we'll go back to while we're on this subject, we'll go back to my advisory time, and there's some thoughts I thought you have in mind. Why did you want to extend to get a rifle company? Mm-hmm. Well, when you're a psychological officer, psy-ops, and you're doing non-combatant missions over there in the Rungside Special Zone where I was for a whole year, there's this burning desire to get it into the middle of the thing. I mean, it was like practicing football and never playing. I mean, I don't know if you ever played football, but being on the sideline is not fun. Mm-hmm. Getting in there and mixing it up is where it's all about. Mm-hmm. And so there's that passion inside of you, and you're going to get to that later on. Absolutely. So you have another question for me, or
no? Yeah, we'll keep going, and I will have questions as we come up to the advisory portion because I don't understand it. But first, at what point do you know? What's your earliest memory of thinking, like, I'm going to go be a Marine and I'm going to go do this?
Yeah. It's a good question. I had no idea whatsoever about the service. Happily playing football, happily playing lacrosse. And, lacrosse is in the spring of the year. And it came Easter time, I'm home on vacation and taking a break from early lacrosse until the more serious games. And my dad said, what are you going to do about the draft? What draft? That's where my mind was. It had to do with girls, beer,
And lacrosse.
and lacrosse. Anyhow, so
wrong
I
with
didn't
that.
know much about the draft. I was, for the first semester at college, in the Air Force ROTC.
Mm-hmm.
That was an option course. I thought, well, I'll try it. And golly, it was like, well, anyways, you know me by now. Those guys were not the same as me.
It's not the same. Not the same cloth.
No, they didn't. They didn't even know where the football field was. You know, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So I couldn't identify with it. So I dropped out of that. But this draft thing. So I asked about it, and he said, "Yeah, draft's alive." You know. I said, "It is." You know, I thought this. So I get back to college in Ohio, Granville, Ohio. The name of the college is Denison University.
Mm-hmm.
And it was we had about 1,500 students, so it was a small university, but very nice.
Mm-hmm.
And I walk into the student union down below one of the old buildings, and lo and behold, there's the Marine Corps officer selection officer. Hey, you're a Marine? Yeah. I knew about Marines. You know, John Wayne. I used to watch those films. You know, you turned it back to the 1950s, where I was growing up and watching.
Sure.
And sure, John Wayne was playing all sorts of Iwo Jima Marine films and things like that. Well, at any rate, so I said, well, do you have a program or something? You know, I asked a stupid question because I really had no clue.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, all you have to do is take the test. Well, I took the test, and it was questions like, if you're landing a small boat, do you go with the current or against the current? And, you know, I had been down at the Jersey Shore enough that I knew you don't go with the current. But those questions were not that tough. Not that I was brilliant. I wasn't, believe me. But those questions were just fundamental. Well, you passed. Congratulations. I said, okay, well, what's next? Okay, you got to go. Here's April. We say, well, 2 months in June, you got to report into Quantico. What? Do what? Wait, Quantico, where's that? That type of thing. And so at any rate, that's how I got in. And does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. So it wasn't like it was a calling that was sucking you in. It was kind of by chance, would you say?
Good question. I had no or little bitty information. My mom had a younger brother, several years younger, and he went into the Navy in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And he stayed, I think, in San Francisco. Now, my dad and her other brothers were too old for the draft of World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was not much information about fighting and services in our family.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I got to the Marine Corps, of course, I didn't know much. I had that Air Force experience. That wasn't a clue. But so at any rate.
Check. So you're at Denison. You run into the recruiter. You take the test, and that kind of just starts the beginning of the process of the ball rolling. Yeah,
and I will say it's an officer selection officer because there's some stories coming up. If you're talking about my current book ever, we get onto it. And you'll know about the OSO and the officer selection officer. And there is some, well, that's a story about African-American Marines who become officers and all the adjustments the Marine Corps made bringing in African-American officers into the Marine Corps. So they changed the name OSO to several other names. I just want to share that with you later on if you have interest.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So talk to me about Quantico when you go there and you get immersed into the actual training for the first time. What's that like?
You know, it was very easy. The only thing is I'm as clumsy as can be. So drill was not. They used to pull me out of the platoon and practice going up and down. I right now I got one bow leg that sticks out like this. The other was pretty straight. And but gee, I was not the most graceful thing. Even in football and lacrosse, I was aggressive, but
it worked there because you could just run into things.
I was a pure jock. I was not an athlete. My brother's an athlete, but I'm more of the kind of guy who's, besides that, at Governor Mifflin High School in Shillington, I was co-captain of 5 varsity teams, which my brother and I, the first 2 years, sophomore and junior, was swimming, and the last 3 years, my senior year rather, I was football, swimming, and track. I was president of my junior and senior class. So there's this inkling to kind of, come on, guys, let's get going. Here's where we're going. What's the coach? Okay, coach saying that. Let's go. What are we waiting for? Blah, blah, blah. So you can understand when I say I was an advisor, I had one or two passive kind of Vietnamese counterparts. Mm-hmm. It didn't make a lot of sense. Get me in a war right now.
Yeah.
What are you waiting for?
And was OCS, I would imagine, structured different to facilitate quick turnover to get people out at the time, or
no? I joined before the war, so I went through OCS. Actually, it was platoon leaders course, which is OCS for graduates, and platoon leaders is a program for undergraduates where you do 12 weeks, and if you were like I did, only my junior year. Remember the draft issue? Then I did them all at once. Mm-hmm. And then if you were a freshman and sophomore year, you do 6 weeks, then you come back your junior, senior year.
Check.
And that's PLC, Platoon Leaders Course.
Check.
Yeah. Okay. And so how was it?
Other
than the drill, it was a piece of cake.
I hear people talk about it now, and I just wonder what it...
It's a piece of cake for me, who was a jock. I could do all that stuff. And so that was not very difficult, and my ability to lead guys was
you already had that natural from your school and different teams.
I was co-coached in a football team at college too, so all those things are just kind of well, let's do it, guys. Mm-hmm. Where's the war? Mm-hmm. Well, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. And so you go OCS, you get your schools out of the way, and then where do you go from there? What's your first unit that you go to?
First duty station was Hawaii, the 1st Marine Brigade, and I was truly blessed. You kind of check in, and I was met by, let's say, the executive officer of the rifle company. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the next day I met the commanding officer, tall, 6'1", spoke so quietly. Hey, here's what's important. Was probably the most dynamic leader I've ever had, even though he spoke quietly, and it was all education. Mm-hmm. And it's like he grooms you. And then Captain Steele, who became in 1980s, mid-80s, the commanding general of the 2nd Marine Division. Okay, so this guy here was super, and we became very close friends, so that we saw each other periodically, even when I got out for 10 months, and then coming back in, we stayed in touch by communications. I think we had emails at that time. Let's see, I came back in and... No, they didn't have emails. So it was 66 when I came back in.
I don't think emails were there yet.
No, but we got the word. There was drums,
whistling,
smoke signals.
Pigeons.
Yeah, at any rate, yeah. In fact, I have a story to tell once we get to the rifle company. We'll let you go on though.
No, I want you to go on. So now you're at your rifle company. You checked into that.
You want to? What?
Yeah, let's kick into it.
Okay, so. I have this great rapport with OK Steele, Orlo, and he goes by Ort, and he's still alive. He's 90. Why? I don't know, because he used to chain smoke Chesterfield. Still, you couldn't believe it. But anyway, he's 90, and so I got extended. You go home for a month when you extend. Mm-hmm. And then you come back, and now I'm a captain. Mm-hmm. I would say a mid-range. Well, they had a program there different than what we had, because we enlarged the size of the Marine Corps, I don't know if you know this, from about 174 to about 300,000. As a result, we didn't have enough lieutenants. Mm. So they went through all the units, and anybody who was like a staff sergeant, a gunny in particular, master sergeant, anybody who could probably just raise their hand were commissioned to fill in the blanks. So,
and this is prior to, or,
well,
or this is following your
this is in
advisory time?
66. Start of 66, that program started happening.
Okay.
Because we were going up that big. And it was so, if you were a staff sergeant, you guarantee you'd be in.
Lieutenant.
Yeah, and they had a nice program. I mean, off the subject, but back on that, and then off the subject again. But so they stayed through Vietnam, and then when we downsized, they were given an option to retire as a first lieutenant or a captain, or go back as a rank or two higher, like a master sergeant or master guns or sergeant major or something like that. And so the choices were nice for them. And I think it was 50-50 what they did.
Yeah.
I don't know the statistics on that. But they were fun. I had a Mustang, and they're all Mustangs, and I had a Mustang who was my best lieutenant as a company. So, at any rate, I get into Da Nang after my 1 month hiatus from the war, and I know better at how the game is played. When I was first in, I had a job at the 2nd Marine Division staff. I was the ranges and education officer, something like that. And so I knew all the other, how the rest of the offices, the adjutant and till and all that, how they all work. So I got there, I went up. So anyway, I got the plane gets off. Everybody over here, I guess, and like your typical trooper, you do exactly what the guy says. And I saw them being herded, and I went up to a Jeep. I said, "Where's the adjutant's office?" So I just broke away from the group. They had no idea who was on the plane or that type of thing. We lost a lot of guys, just so you know that. So having a roster, and we came up over on our own individual orders, different than what you guys did. And so, because you deployed together as a unit is much better than going on to individuals. Okay, I will assure you of that. Even though the guys that get injured or the like, hurts you more because you know them longer, you know their girlfriend or wife or something like that. Whereas we got mixed together. At any rate, I jump in a Jeep and go off to the adjutant's office. Where's the headquarters? Okay, so I get there. I go to the adjutant. Hey, I said, you got a list of commanding officers here, battalion commanders? Oh, yes, sir, yes, sir. I was captain and he was a lieutenant. And so I go down there and there goes, Major OK Steele. 2-5, got it. Yep. Okay, can I contact 2-5? Yes, sir, here's the phone. Yep, up. Hey, may I speak to Major Steele? Yeah. And I'm back in town. I need a company. He says, do not leave that office. Do not leave that office. And he was 40 miles away. I will have a Jeep there in an hour and 15 minutes.
You're mine.
So anyway, yeah, that type of thing. So
now, just so I understand this better, at this point you'd already done your advisory time.
I did, yeah.
And so can you backtrack just for a minute and explain to me the advisory program, what your role is, and your thoughts in general about how well it worked for what it was designed for?
Right, I can. Let's start with me as the schools and range officer in the G3 of the 2nd Marine Division at Lejeune.
Okay.
In what we call building number 2. You know that one, where the circle is, and you go down to the very end, there's a river, and there's a building there, and it's it's the logistics building.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And that's where the division headquarters was, not up there where it is today. And so I was up there, and now you got to ask me again what the SAPs. I get orders after there because I was due to go to Vietnam. I came back from on active duty, and they had to put me somewhere until I got into the queue.
Sure.
So it was 10 months after there at Lejeune. And then I got orders to SIAP school, Psychological Officers Operations course. that type of thing, or psychological operations officer course, one of those two. And of course, I knew all about that, like you know about it today, right? Zero.
Nothing. Loud music.
Although I did have a school's catalog with me, so I had kind of a hint and things like that. But I really, because I'm a schools officer, I wanted to go to jump school first. So I got myself a set of orders to jump school, combined the two, and that's what I did.
There you go.
So I got my 5 jumps at Fort Benning, and then I went to Fort Bragg at the John F. Kennedy School of Special Warfare. And that's where all those kind of things are. On top of the PSYOP school, and I'll get to it, on top of the PSYOP school, I also was ordered to what we call the MATA course, Military Advisory MATA. Course, something like that, course. And that was where you learn to become an advisor. And whether you're going to be a combat advisor or like I, a PSYOPs advisor, it didn't matter. You're all together with all the Marines. You hang around together. We get free jumps and all that kind of stuff. We jump with the 82nd. was a lot of fun. And that's other experiences that are fun.
Oh, yeah.
And at any rate, so I got those two. And then I reported, after the jump school, I reported into the PSYOP school. And psychological operations basically is a feature of war that combatants don't get involved with, but there's a need to communicate that essentially your allies and you are friendly guys and you have good values and things like that, and the bad guys are bad guys. And so how do you communicate that to everybody is the game. And it's not that you're an expert on broadcasting or things like that. They do talk. The academics talk about it. Flyers, dropping flyers from the air or handing them out, and then intelligence, hooking on with intelligence when you get someone's ready to turn themselves in or something like that. You do things like you try to get people to what we called Chuhoi, which was a surrender program at Chuhoi, and so when they did, then what do you got to do with them? Well, they go to a program, but you try to get them to surrender, the bad guys. And so where I got a stamp saying, okay, I've been to the school.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I'm a brilliant guy when it comes to PSYOPs.
Check the box.
Yeah,
It's interesting, though, at one point in your book, you talked about capturing a guy, and then PSYOPs blasted out some stuff to kind of discourage the enemy and almost made it seem like, shamed the enemy to the point where I want to say in the book he was crying because PSYOPs was doing their job and they're trying to turn these guys over, but kind of at the expense of a POW, and that kind of stuff is real, and that's kind of where PSYOPs goes with it once they're into the combat situation.
Yeah, we captured, I think we were talking about capturing that guy, and there's a photograph, I think, in there of me talking to him, because I could speak, can't use the word half-ass Vietnamese. I couldn't comprehend listening as well because people are speaking so fast. But I did have a lot of the words memorized so that I could make sentences and get that across, particularly with my counterpart when I was an advisor and others who got to know me and my broken accent and something like that. It's like we all know folks with not a natural English accent, and but we get to understand what they're saying anyhow because it's a limited,
sure.
Yeah, and so
it's interesting what PSYOPs brings to the table. That's for sure.
Yeah, when I got there, okay, I'm a PSYOPs advisor. We have, I'm going to describe the place where I got. You're laying in Tan Son Nhut, which is just 20 miles north of Saigon.
Okay.
And went to Saigon, somehow got a stamp by the advisory group, and immediately had someone drive me out to the advisory place. We were at Nha Be, Nhabe. Notice how I say Nha Be. It's Nha Be. Actually, in how you pronounce it, there's 5 accents that go along with the same word in if you're using BE Bay, that type of thing, because it's going to be pronounced like that. But it's some, if they have a dot underneath it, it's Bay, like this. And if it has a line that goes up, it goes Bay. And if a line goes up, Bay. And it has a circle line like above it, a Bay. So when you're talking that,
difficult to.
It's something that you get used to. And they know my broken accent and things like that. But those are the things when the advisor course, there was, in the morning we had language. And how many times did we have to say, bow, D-bon taxi, bow new tin, go buy taxi, how much money? That type of thing. Say it again, say it again, say it again. That type of thing. Yeah. At any rate, good show in that. And so we got there, and the vehicle comes in, and it's a little town, and they're all little towns. Hamlet. Amounts to be a hamlet, only it's kind of grown up because we have a medium-sized, small-sized Navy base on the other side of it. So we have the town first, then a gate that you go through the regional forces compound, where I was an advisor, and then there's another gate that was built into the river junction, which was a mile across this way, a mile across that way, enlarged out, and then the Navy was there. And they had mines. Okay, so why was it important? We were from the South China Sea, probably 20 miles inland. There were two rivers coming from the South China Sea, kind of making a V, if you will. And at one side is the Vung Tau shipping channel, which went from the South China Sea, U.S. and all that kind of stuff. And big ships would go up that river and on up to either mainly up to Vung Tau. Vung Tau, again, is just, it's 20 miles out of Saigon, but it was the main logistical base for the U.S. for probably 2 corps in Saigon area, Rungsat Special Zone, and 4 corps or the Delta. And from there, all the supplies went out, and all that kind of either transport or something like that. And then there was another one called the Saigon River, which also went from the South China Sea, and that went up there, almost meeting. In other words, they came like a triangle. We were at the top of that triangle, Yambay. So we had that whole triangle, and it was this forest of death. Rungsat, Daku Rungsat. Daku is a territory, or area or something like that. Daku, and Rungsat, R-U-N-G, Rung, and it had one of those little markers. It went down Rungsat, and S-A-T with a dot underneath it, but pronounce your S is like shot. So Daku Rungsat, and that was a triangle. Now, what happened in that triangle is, and we remember, it's not part of I Corps or 2 Corps, 3 Corps, 4 Corps. It was a special zone. So what happened? The Navy was in charge of making sure our supplies safely got up the river. They were not blown up by mines. And the VC had a good control of mine warfare.
In the water?
In the water. And on the sides. And at Vung Tau, which was the one corner, but on the far side of the river, so you get the triangle, and it's got a river, but it's got the side on the Rungsat side, and then the other side of the river is Vung Tau at that one point. It's on this. It's a vacation spot. It was a big vacation spot, and a lot of R&R, in-country R&R, went there. Then they could be on the beaches and stuff like that. It was safe. But then the ships had to traverse all the way up through there. So the Navy had minesweepers, and they'd go out first thing in the morning and make sure that it was clear for the ships to go up through there. The Navy had maybe 2, 3, 4, I think 2 helicopters that would act in support. The Navy had, and I don't know, there's not a thing there. I don't believe it's here. Had patrol river boats, PBRs, PBR. Patrol boats, river. That's how it is. But we patrol river boats. But pole boat, you know how the military does things. Anyway,
Very crayonish.
yeah, they're very creative too. That's something the guys are going to stumble on when they try to explain the reference. Okay, now we're serious. So, at any rate, we cleared that river all the time. Now, the Rungsat Special Zone was a swamp. It was like, think Everglades. We had 20-foot tides. That is a lot, more than where I live out there where the White Oak is, and we have maybe 4-foot tides way up. We're up. But they had 20 foot, and that water ran through their multi-creeks and multi-rivers going through this 20 miles to get up to our area, okay? There were 5 villages, or hamlets, I'm sorry, hamlets. And my PSYOPs guys, and so, no, wait a minute, the Navy was a regional forces. And each one of the villages had popular forces. So what we're dealing with is local cops, more or less, military types, but it's a local cops, and they probably weren't educated too much and things like that. And each one of those hamlets downriver would have maybe 100 people living in there with kids and all that kind of stuff. If it had 200, it had 200. The one across from Vugtau was a little bit bigger, but that was our area. And there was a total of 5 of those. The VC used to take rice from Four Corps or the Delta way south and run it through the Rungsat Special Zone this way, with the ships coming up the other way, and run it in sampans on up through there to feed the other VC or NVA in 3 Corps. They take the rice like that. It's all logistics. You know? So we tried to prevent that, and they also did mines. So my buddy was the combat advisor. We were in the advisor hooch. So we're in the middle of this little our regional force base.
Sure.
And they had regional forces, army kind of looking guys, and they are meant to be what we know as our state militia. What do you call it here in town?
National Guard.
National Guard.
Okay.
And so you're not the force, but they've been educated. Combined with that military, the army guy was the Navy side of it. And they had small boats and all that kind of stuff too. And the commander of the whole Rungsat Special Zone was a lieutenant commander or major type of Vietnamese. And his counterpart was a Navy guy who was a commander and our boss. And he was also the boss of the minesweepers and the helicopters and things like that.
Check.
And so at any rate, you know, this is kind of a neat situation for a guy getting groomed for war. It really is, because you get all the little things, all the little screw-ups you can do. They don't cost you life at that point. Because you're at least savvy, you know. You could be a bad situation, but you're pretty savvy about what to anticipate, what's the capability, when is it dangerous, when is it not dangerous. All those things you own by the time you leave. But you don't own it in the beginning.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I want to talk about it, because it seems like it would be smart, productive, successful practice if I was able to go in, or you were able to go into, let's say, Marja for 10 months and watch the enemy and see the TTPs and watch people operate. You'd be way more lethal squad leader, team leader, platoon leader on the next go around, because you have that much time immersed into current TTPs and current actions. And so I dig that. So did you found that as a positive and reinforcing program, I assume? Or?
You don't wake up to that. You have it. It becomes part of you. And you don't say, oh, here's a light switch. No, but it becomes, all those lessons learned are embedded in your head.
Sure.
And into your body and psyche and all that kind of stuff. I will share one thing. Cliff Dunning was a stud. He was I was a little senior to him. We're both captains. I mean, we're talking 6 months. So all of a sudden, I was in charge of this advisory team. We had a master sergeant, and we had a corpsman, and we had a PSYOPs NCO, and a communicator. And we had an intel officer and the infantry guy, which is Cliff Dunning, and he's a short guy, right? But I forgot what it was in the Marine Corps. We have this, the best physically conditioned person on the base. I forget what it's called. There's an award they give out.
Iron Man or something like that.
Iron Man. Yeah. So he won the Iron Man award. So we're dealing with a real stud of a guy, even though he's like this. And I don't think we're there. And I got there just before him. I don't think we're there a week when the first mortars started coming in. You know, and you know how that is. Like, oh my, this must be war. And they're coming in from outside the town, rice paddies, being shot from, however, 2,000 yards away or something like that. And they're hitting the base, but they make a lot of noise. So we have a bunker outside, our advisory team bunker. Cliff's already gone. I'm intel officer, and the three officers were together, and there was a enlisted troopers, the staff NCO kind of place too. And well, I'm busy trying to get into Cliff's shoe, which is a size 8 or a size 7, and I'm a size 10 and a half, right? I spent the whole time during that mortar attack trying to get that. Finally, I'm hopping on out there, motherfucker, what's going on? And they're all laughing their ass off because one of them got to get a flashlight. I said, Cliff, will you put your shoes underneath my, because I was on the, oh, never mind, long story short, but those are the kind of lessons learned, and they're good, and you look back and you say, oh, my. Okay.
You got to take the good from it too.
Yeah. At any rate, he put on go-aheads, and they were slipped right on.
Yeah.
I didn't have any go-aheads there. At any rate, go ahead.
Epic. No, that's awesome. It's those little things.
Well, that's what I mean. You get smart.
Yeah.
You realize that your shoes got to be here, and when you go to sleep, you double check.
Oh yeah.
And we're double bed, cot type of thing.
And this was at the advisory location.
Yeah,
which was
on
where?
Yeah, Bay.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. And so you do that for
A year.
And then after that you volunteer to extend
During that time, yeah.
Towards during that time.
Somewhere my changeover date was in June, I would say. So I would say right after Tet. So I would say in February, I must have been thinking about it. In March, I did it.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys, coming back in now. I want to transition now. I wanted to build up the context of this story the best that I could, and it seems that we've done that now, concluding with the advisory role and the wealth of knowledge gained in an advisory role. And so, Dave, kicking back to it, before we get into Battlelines, you run your time up with your advisory role, and then you said, you kind of compared it with being, on the football field and standing on the sidelines and seeing what the enemy's doing, seeing what the other team's got to offer, and now you're chomping at the bit to say, I didn't come all this way to learn all of this, to not then go in and command this and do something about it. So touch on those emotions, and then we'll kind of kick into the book, or those feelings that you got at that time.
Yeah, sure. When I was thinking about this and my frustration, I realized the danger of going north, because there's certainly a lot of activity at that time. It was the height of the war. And I also realized it was putting my marriage in jeopardy, which really was not very strong anyhow. And my time I came on active duty, and down at Camp Lejeune, she stayed up in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And then I went to school for, doggone near 5-6 months or something like that. And then I was going right overseas. So, when you're separated for a long period of time, it's not the healthiest thing on a marriage. And so that's, you all know that. But I realized that I needed personally to do this, and I didn't want to get out because I was going back to a half-ass marriage anyhow. So I wanted to get myself taken care of and get a real check by my name, which is I hate to say that was career motivated too, but there was the football theory, but and get me in the game, coach. But also, a whole host of other things. I wanted to just help out where I could. So yeah, I extended and all that kind of stuff.
Is there something to be said about spending that amount of time on an advisory role in a war where a lot of people are getting cut down? That did you build animosity or resentment, like you wanted to go out and fight these people because of what you'd seen for the last 12 months, or was it more of
no, not for me? No,
Okay.
Because the VC we picked up were just typical 115-pound, 5'4" guys, and there I had no animosity towards them. I wasn't in a lot of fights or anything like that. Then we might have had some guys get shrapnel. It was not a heavy combat situation, even though in the runks that we did ambushes along the rivers, where they were cutting through, and we tried to shoot their sampans going filled with rice going up north. But no, I didn't. Mine was not. In fact, I love the Vietnamese. And there may be a photograph in that Battlelines book there of me talking to a Vietnamese guy. We just captured him. And so I could interview him about his family, and how long he's been here. And like all of the guys in our young guys in war, whether it's a Marine or not, once you're captured like this, if someone's really friendly to you, those guys were starving, they had malaria, blah, 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 blah. And so... And I'm asking him about their family, and I could speak enough that he understood me. And he could tell I was not the enemy, like a Russian or something like that, for that one particular fellow. So I had no personal hate for them or anything like that. Now, you guys are going to think it differently because you left Lejeune and you go to war. You have that mindset, more aggressive and more detrimental for the enemy, where I didn't. I love the Vietnamese. I realized all this history when the French were there, and when the French got beaten at the Dien Bien Phu up north there, and then they have the Geneva Accord, which has the 17th parallel, generally speaking, as the DMZ, demilitarized zone, and it's about 5, and that separates the two countries. Those Vietnamese really like to be one. They, this communist stuff with Ho Chi Minh and all that kind of stuff. They're not big champions of it. They're farmers, right? And they're proud of their language and their history. And Vietnam, as a whole, and I can say this with assurance, they hated the Chinese. Back there in the days of Mao Zedong, Mao Zedong's the current guy, but Genghis Khan, back there in the 1400s, 1500s, Vietnam was captured by the Chinese and occupied and put down. So for about 200-300 years, somewhere in that time frame, and they dislike the Chinese. So the Chinese were trying to buddy up with them. And Ho Chi Minh, who was a general, he in the 1920s, he had gone back to Moscow to learn about communism. So he comes back here. So he's now the liaison with China. But the bulk of the people didn't like China. So it was interesting. And they wanted to have peace. And the bulk of people, north and south. And you know that when you're over in Afghanistan, those people didn't want to have a war in their country. The locals, it was hurting their kids and it was hurting growing poppies and whatever else was he had going for himself. And so this is, I'm 27 or something like that. I've been through all this stuff. I know all that stuff. I'm wise. I'm not coming in like a Lance Corporal with, just out of Paris Island by about 6 months or something like that.
Still shitting third phase.
Yeah, you got it. No, I'm understanding these people, and I'm loving these people. Yeah. And so when we captured someone, we caught a bunch, even though they get wounded and stuff like that, and they're belly aching like a trooper would belly ache if he's wounded. So at any rate, you have to show compassion once they're out of the war.
I think that's what I think that's what makes. I used to tell the guys when we were about to do some spicy shit, like we're the thing that makes us different is that we can possess control over our emotions and our actions. We are not just going to go out and murder people. If we can capture people and form intelligence, that's what we're going to do. And I think that definitely during the invasion, my psychology in my mind was there is no chances. It does not matter. Everything is my guys first. And it stayed that way. But my psychology and maturity changed as I went just in that 7 months I realized that there's a lot of these folks that are put between a rock and a hard place. And they have one choice to make between two horrible decisions. And like, most prominently, like the night riders, the Taliban would ride in and snatch a family up or snatch the kids up or leave a message that says, here's the IED, here's a map of where we want to put it, and if you don't do it, we're going to rape and murder the rest of your family, and you'll never get them back. And so like any admirable father is going to do whatever it takes to get and safeguard his family.
Well, there you go.
And any admirable Lance Corporal Marine is going to smoke that farmer when he starts digging the bomb in. And so I wrote, in the book, I wrote a little poem down because we watched a guy just, the night letter came in one night. A couple nights later, we watched a farmer go out and he pink missed himself trying to put this bomb in. He has no clue what he's doing, but he had a night letter. Or a night rider drop a letter off, said his whole family's going to get schwacked. And so and then you realize, like, that's who I'm fighting.
Yeah,
and a lot of times it's really just it's depressing because they are unlucky to be born in that region at that time, right? And then there's the kids, and the kids always struck a place of in our hearts, from giving them candy to giving them water to playing with them, and you realize like after a time that this is just a bad situation, and they didn't ask for it and they can't control it, but this is their reality, and then you kind of got to compartmentalize that and still to go on with your mission, like the cultural differences, like we talked last night about a lot that messed me up in my head, at least from over there, was not killing. I didn't have a problem killing the enemy. It does suck when collateral damage is involved, but the cultural differences on human life and the way that they structure their reality are really were shocking to me. I would say so. Interesting.
Yeah. I think we see it together on that side. The Lance Corporal doesn't, and so if
and should he?
And shit,
because will that build hesitation, or will that build that split second of thought in his mind, at his experience? Maybe not. I don't know.
It depends on if you're educating them. See, again, I was 27 or something, almost 28 when I had it, and I've been in country for a while. So I'm knowing that the newbie, the guy's just coming in. Again, we have not organizations. We have onesie-twosies coming in. And they're all replacements. So spending time with them or telling the squad leaders, here's what I hope you're telling them. We're going to be doing this, that, and the other thing. But educate them about what we're doing and all that. Just, looking for squad leaders doing their thing. But
what does it mean? We'll get into it. I want to show this real quick, guys. This is the book Battlelines. I want to give you a close up right here. This is Dave's book that was composed. It covers 5 years of Vietnam. I am not going to go into all of it. I have some excerpts that I'm going to read, and then I'll shift over to Dave and kind of get his emotions, his opinions on them. But please pick this up. I don't even want to read all of it. It's so good. This is a page turner of 400 plus pages that I couldn't put down, finished it in 5 days. This is a timeless work of what in the future, if we don't learn to be better to each other, is going to repeat itself. We could all hope for not, but we need to definitely consult on that. So in the book, the first passage that I'm going to go to is the Union 2 operation, and I'm just going to read a few excerpts from it to give the viewers an idea of the battle, and then following that, I want to kind of touch on some of the solemn things that happened after you have warriors go out and put it on the line and really just get after it and do their job. It's recognized by the rest of the warrior community from the top to the bottom, and that's something impressive. The notes that I had said on this one say, the man on the ground gets support when he needs it. I'm not building the context. I'm kind of jumping right in the middle, so you guys bear with me. Contextually, you're going to have to pick the book and get that context for yourself. But 12:05 hours, the 1st platoon marched off the high ground between Hill A and Hill B. Steady in their descent, they followed a path leading to the rice field, settled in the conclave between the hills. The rice paddy. At the rice paddy, the platoon turned 45 degrees towards the northwest to allow the 2nd platoon to cross behind when it arrived at the field. The 2nd platoon's descent proved tougher. They moved across the face of Hill B. The drop was 40 meters or so into large boulders covered on the face. Despite the obstacle, in a matter of minutes, the squad leader under Corporal Mac McDonald reached the field. The 2nd platoon's 2nd squad, under the leadership of Corporal Ted Verena, had just started climbing over and around the large boulders and entering the face of the hill when the enemy opened up with AK-47 fire suddenly from their left. Amazingly, the fire originated from the same location from which 1st platoon had just passed. PFC Werner gasped from a painful, sucking chest wound that he had received in the onslaught, cried out with what's left of the air in his lungs and to the rest of his squad. They're in NVA uniforms. They're not VC. Instantly, along the southern edge of the rice field, 75 meters to the left, Lance Corporal Gobrick, spotted 10 to 15 NVA regulars covered with camouflage, which hid their khaki uniforms, running out of the trench line, through the bamboo tree line and into the rice paddy below. The enemy wore pith helmets with bamboo leaves stuck into them. PFC Private First Class Mills, one of Verona's squads, opened up on the backs of the NVA troops, further flushing them into the field. Corporal McDonald's squad, already in the field, and, by this point, on the company's left flank, immediately turned and assaulted the enemy soldiers. Mac's attacking squad, consisting of Lance Corporal Art Bird, Private First Class Mike Candelas, Lance Corporal Mike Hernandez, Private First Class Legier, Private First Class Wainscoat, Corporal Tom Searfoss, fired their weapons as they charged the enemy. The Marines overpowered the unwitting group, who were more interested in escaping than fighting. The bodies of the wounded and dead NVA scattered from the edge of the tree line 40 meters or so into the paddy. Hey, Sheely, tell Fox 6 that 1st squad just bagged 15 NVA in the paddy in the front of Hill A. 2nd Lieutenant Kelsey mentioned to the radio operator. With that, the last of 2nd platoon began entering the dry rice field to begin searching for fallen NVA soldiers. The soldiers appeared to be quite young. Heavy, and their packs were filled with rocket-propelled grenades, RPGs, and AK-47 ammunition, also 82mm mortar rounds. By the time the entire 2nd platoon was 50 meters into the rice paddy and had peeled off to the left, the company command group entered the scene. The rice paddy, now clearly visible to Graham, was 350 meters deep. It ran left to right about 450 meters across. The tree line directly in the front was obviously a hamlet of, is that Vinway? Vinway too? Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, close enough.
Okay.
Let's leave it like that.
Okay.
I have to look at it first.
Okay, Fox's objective. Along their left flank was the hedgerow of bamboo trees. On the right was another hedgerow of bamboo trees. But unlike the first, this one did not enclose the entire field. This hedgerow stopped about 75 meters shy of the hamlet and exposed another 600 to 800 meters of rice field, somewhere close to where Delta was fighting. Graham recognized this and the company's huge vulnerability as he pressed down upon him like Atlas with the weight of the world on his shoulders. 1,310 hours. The pitching of the battle, the pitched battle up at Delta Company's area continued. As Fox moved forward cautiously, Delta's fight served as a gruesome omen for the men of 2-5. Rounds strayed from Delta Company's engagement and flew overhead and landed in the rice field near the Marines. Fox's unit leader shouted orders to stay down if you're not involved with the POWs. Despite the dangerous and sporadic small arms from Keene, the Kent Carson scout, he wounded up near the 1st platoon's position. His eyes studied the rice field. Slowly and methodically, he scanned back and forth as though he was looking for something lost. Raising his weapon, he pointed the muzzle at the ground 30 or 40 meters ahead of him. Lance Corporal Gobrich observed the scout and mentioned and motioned his gun to his team leader, Corporal Rick Barnes. "Hey, Rick," he whispered, "look at the VN over there behind 1st platoon." Rick had no sooner turned around as he witnessed Keene fire 6 rounds without hesitation into the field. Severed straw flew into the air as the rounds impacted near the ground. Ken moved purposefully towards the impact area and fired 3 more rounds. Gobatruk headed over towards the scout. Now he too spotted another path of recently cut grass. Carefully approached it. It was a spider trap. He peered at it intently and then opened up with a short burst from his tracer-filled M16 magazine. He and Barnes crept up to it. Barnes nudged the grass that covered the spider trap hiding place with his M16 and found 2 dead NVA. At 13:50 hours, the company began its track across the rice field. The 1st and 2nd platoons were in line with each of the 2 squads forward. The Marines readied themselves for resistance as they grew closer and closer to the line of bamboo trees masking Vinway 2, their ultimate objective. Due to the shape of the rice paddy on the left, the 2nd platoon neared the tree line for 200 meters away, while 1st platoon perhaps 250 meters from it, approaching from the right. 14:20, the heat of the tropical summer afternoon, the NVA initiated their attack with unrelenting bursts of machine gun fire from the tree line that stood directly in front of 1st platoon. Another machine gun fired from an area with a small pagoda located in front of 2nd platoon. Within a millisecond, 50 to 100 automatic and semi-automatic arms were unleashed upon them from the bounding hedgerows in front. A machine gun and 2 automatic weapons in Hill B fired from behind. B-40 rockets roared feet above the paddies, impacting on the far side. Another 51 caliber NVA machine gun located on Hill A opened up 20 seconds later. Mercilessly, it fired into the backs of 2nd platoon. A torrent of 82mm mortars rained down on the rice field and trapped the Marines. The enemy machine gun at Vinway 2 area had a low angle of fire that failed to impact the paddies. Instead, grazed the grasses 20 to 30 inches above it. The machine gun on Hill A, however, fired at a plunging angle, spraying bullets down upon the field and the trapped company. Through the wall of lead, the men of 2nd Platoon instinctively launched their final assault, attempting to gain superiority. Lance Corporal Gobatruk marveled at Corporal Jerry Westfall, the squad leader on his left, who charged the machine gun bunker with his M16 at the hip while making a wild charging yell. Racing forward, Gobatruk glanced right towards the infantry squad. Firing, men dropped even as they ran. He glanced left. Westfall had been cut down. Large holes opened up in their line. The brave men of 2nd Platoon, no longer able to sustain the assault, one by one dove belly down and hit the paddy as they continued firing. The deafening snap of the bullets in the air above them. The NVA mowed down both the 1st and 2nd Platoons. Many made it to the prone position without being wounded. Some did not. The dead were still. The mortally wounded lay helpless, dying in the rice field. The slightly wounded remained frozen, calling out to see if their buddies were still alive. Only a 2-foot dike and a poor angle provided safety from the deadly guns. The killed and wounded littered the field, and 2nd Lieutenant Schultz, 1st Platoon Commander, lay mortally wounded. Schultz's platoon radio operator, Corporal Lloyd Woods, realized that his lieutenant was exposed to enemy gunfire and jumping up, made a mad rush through the splattering lead projectiles to reach him. Once there, he hoisted the lieutenant on his shoulders and lumbered both of them back to a safe position behind the dikes. Then, rallying his 4 companions, Woods sprinted across the open rice paddy, attempting to evacuate another Marine he saw laying near an enemy machine gun. When he reached the wounded man, Woods realized that moving him would be impossible because of the enemy fire. Ignoring the spurt of inaccurate machine gun rounds, the corporal crashed through the tree line towards the enemy. The gunner, in total, all at Woods' reckless aggressiveness, failed to shoot the charging Marine. Woods fired his M16 until he was out of bullets, killing the stunned NVA. He picked up the NVA machine gun and leapt into an adjacent emplacement, taking out a 2nd gunner, using the enemy gun on the other hostile position. He provided cover for his companions and allowed for the other Marines to evacuate their wounded men. Corporal Woods wasted no time returning to the field where Fox's wounded lay to organize the evacuation. And if you can just give me your thoughts on a firefight like this, where the worst possible situation begins to unfold, and you've got grazing fire and you've got plunging fire, and what is it about leaders that when confronted with such catastrophic adversity gives them the gumption, let's say, to organize men and continue to fight in a situation like that?
That's a good one. And that was Captain Graham.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a magnificent leader. And I always considered myself to be an average bloke, but he was a fellow that was, many thought would rise up to be a general officer. He had the long-term, before he took over Fox, he had a long-term things of accomplishments, Ranger School, and maybe 6 years in the reserves and the National Guard, blah, 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 blah. He stayed by himself. I'm not that person at all. And certainly well written, but let me compliment my daughter for using all the good words. And I have to tell you a little bit more about how we wrote that section.
Sure, please.
At some particular point. But let me talk about Graham for a second. When Graham got, okay, wait a minute. Let's hold a piece of paper, 8 by 11 and a half, 8.5 by 11, sideways, and then realize that the company was coming down on the left-hand side. Now, on covering us, it's like a lake with the woods all around it, with a couple little hills in the middle. And bumps, not hills, but a bump, where there was a chapel of some sort and all that kind of stuff. The bad guys were all the way at the top part of the piece of paper that I'm holding right here, but across this rice field. Okay, so Union 2, in Union 2, we lost... Fox lost 30 killed and had 61 wounded. And so when you're me, a company commander who follows really a great guy, I have to ask myself all the time I'm writing it and talking to these guys, how would I have done it better to prevent that? I mean, it's just begging that question. And backing up, they got to the edge of the bottom of the paper here, the edge of this large rice paddy, which was, what did he say? It was, we define it 300 miles across. It was
300, but then there was the line and then another 300, I think, or so.
Yeah, it was a big rice paddy. And when they got to the first edge here of the rice paddy, Graham wanted to prep the area, and the Fox Company was then attached to it. Was taken away from 2.5 and was attached to 1.5. I think it was 1.5. And so he asked for prep fires, and he got shot down because they've already done that. Well, okay, depending on how adamant that person is, I encountered something like that possibly you'll ask me later on. I know you will. So Dave would have blown off, given the finger to the new battalion commander who's not going to write your fitness report anyhow. And I cared about the troops. Graham is a true military professional and obeying commands. I would have flanked it. As I write it in hindsight, it's like, how would you have done that last play of a football game? Would you have run it or thrown it or Hail Mary or whatever?
For sure.
That type of thing. We can all analyze it. So I was analyzing something a better person to me, as far as the company commander was concerned. I didn't know Graham at all. How would I have done it? I would have flanked it. I would have maneuvered at least a platoon in that, so I had flanking fire on that open paddy if I had to cross it. And so you'd have to make sure you win this area over here, and then you could come in the far area on the far side. See, how simple is it now after I know what they've been through, and I would have done it. So all this goes through my brain.
What was the reason they wouldn't give them fire? Was it just simply
they had
because
done it
they said
before?
they
They had
gave them
done it
bombardment?
before. They had done it before. You get. I'm not saying anything about I mean, all I know is what happened. So it's easy to say, what a stupid guy. Jesus Christ, you got send a couple jets in there. Who cares? They get them anyhow. And you got artillery in the world. They can just hit it. What are they talking about? We can't get into that because Graham's dead and his radio operator's alive. And he's still very much involved with the Fox Company alumni. But that's what happened.
No, it's not on the guys. It's just one of those things when I don't understand, even to this day, to my words, like, why are we caring about bombs, money?
I don't think it was money. I never did get the reasoning. Okay, perhaps.
And this was multiple times in your book from multiple commanders faced this same
where I turned them down
issue.
And I said, up yours, man.
It's like with the helicopter pilots not wanting to land from you later, and we'll talk about it. But it's like,
that's the same thing. How I do things, the way I think is best. And now the next issue I got when you're talking about writing this. Oh, it reads so nice, doesn't it? It reads like it's a big story. Well, if you get a monthly sit rep, which every S3 in the battalion has to write, and I had to get, I asked for all the 2.5s when we were writing this, so I had 60 of them, but then I had to get 1.5 on a couple occasions too because they wrote up the other battles. And if you get that, you get 3 to 5 lines, and you just read 2 or 3 pages, and you got a lot more to read on this one. So we got all Tiffany and I. We were in Reno. That's where they had that reunion. And I said, Tiff, we got to get everybody together. So we get the guys, 2 sets of people, 2 sets of interviews. One is for Union 2, and one is for Hue City. And we get the guys to come in and shooting the bull like you guys are listening right now. Only we were up front and they were sitting like that. Well, we're getting these stories and nobody seemed to. There was no continuity here. Reading this, it seems like, oh man, everybody knew what we're doing. Everybody's doing. They didn't, because these 2 foot high, dry rice paddies. If you didn't want to get your head shot, you'd stay down. Yeah, and if you put your head up just a little bit, you got to hold it. Okay, that type of thing. So the guys over on this side had no idea what the guys over on this side was going through, because there's a big rice paddy dike thing in the middle. And so the squads were like displaced like this. So pulling this all together was in itself, that's how difficult it was in the war when they're shooting at you and you don't know whether you should go further or not. It was that hard to just take their stories when they're sitting next to each other in this arena.
Synthesize them.
And the arena, and he says, well, I didn't know what you guys were doing, and things like that. So, of course, I was still an advisor at that point. So, at any rate,
now, as an advisor, are you getting these reports of these bigger battles or no?
No. Well, it'd be like reading the newspaper, something like that. Hell, they're having a hell of a fight up there. It's called Union 2.
Hey, gotcha. Going back to the book now, I'm not going to read this all. You guys got to pick the book up to get every detail that's in it. But following Union 2, my next part is when Colonel, is it Houghton or?
Houghton.
Houghton, I'm sorry. So Colonel Houghton.
Kenny Houghton. He was a big hero during the World War II. And a great regimental commander. Yeah, and
he says some words here, and we'll go to the book now. Colonel Houghton, who had asked for 2.5's most aggressive company, flew in at first light. This is following Union 2, and I did skip several pages that gets in. Dave and Tiffany really get into the details of how Union 2 unfolded,
and it was rough. Ended up positive. I mean, they won.
No, they did work, but it was a tough fight. It was a tough fight for Fox. And so going to the book, Colonel Houghton, who asked for 2.5's most aggressive company, flew in at first light to see Fox's few survivors. Most had been wounded but not evacuated. To those who were left, he said, Marines, I put Fox into the center of the breach, and your company was the linchpin in defeating the enemy regiment. I had always heard of your fighting ability, your braveness. Today you exceeded your reputation. You men exemplify the heroic character of the 5th Marine Regiment in the United States Marine Corps. With you, I mourn your losses. We can never bring them back. They were brave Marines who did not die in vain. Men of Foxtrot, I salute you and your magnificent fighting company. The colonel gave a hand salute while turning to ensure every Marine and Corpsman had been recognized. Houghton paused and pulled Lee Green. Is it Marengo or Marengo?
Tony Marengo.
Marengo. Yeah, he was big.
And he's a retired sergeant major. Where I get an email from him every day.
Hey, how about that?
Yeah.
So he says...
Mostly jokes.
Houghton paused and pulled Lee, Green, and Marengo aside for a few minutes to give them personal praise before flying away to recognize the others. In the end, Alpha Company killed 30 enemy with another probably killed 33 killed. They captured 27 NVA. Alpha lost 5 Marines and killed with 10 wounded. Delta Company killed 40 enemy with another 50 approximated. Delta's losses were 17 killed and 22 wounded. Fox Company had 170 confirmed kills and another 310 probable killed. Fox lost 30 men killed and sustained 61 wounded. Many men attached to Fox Company during the battle were killed and wounded as well. And that's just something else. What I guess what struck me is the commander to come out and make that trip and look at those men in the eyes and be with them. That's a testament to his character as a leader, in my opinion, and that's huge. That's a huge thing, and it carries a lot of weight, in my opinion, at least for us when we got, similar instances happened with us. It really fueled, let's say, that esprit de corps and that camaraderie with the fighting men in our company, and I'm sure it did the same for them. So what's your thoughts on that evolution or that decision from that commander?
Way City hasn't happened yet, so this is prior to Way City. And Kenny Houghton was a hero as probably World War II, I would guess. He'd probably been a company commander or a lieutenant, something like that. And I don't know if he got Navy Cross or something like that. But 1-5 was going to go into this battle along with some other battalion or regiment. So it was part of the 5th Marines minus and 7th Marines minus. Mm-hmm. And so the 1-5 commander needed another company. So they went to 2-5 and asked for a company, and we want your best company. It was one of those type of things, and that's how Fox Company got put into the breach there that he's talking about. Mm-hmm. And so because it was the best company there, and then now, General Houghton, he was a general in the 3-star, but Colonel Houghton then had 12 companies. And Fox was one of them. So it's not that he would know Fox Company anyhow. Mm-hmm. And so he knew to take that. So you pluck your best guy and you put him in a grinder there, and they get the shit beat at them, but they did win and chase the enemy away. And that was the end of Union 2 at that point. Mm-hmm. They did cleanup and stuff like that. So what did I think about Houghton going there? I think it's the proper thing to do. Mm-hmm. Okay, wouldn't you?
I would. Yeah. I would. It's. I know that all of them don't though, and so on the times where I see it, where I feel like it was done right, I like to try to. Oh yeah. I like to try to highlight that.
Yeah. Well, he says a World War II guy. All those islands and things like that. You got to go. You got to be there, and it's not if you were. Some person who was never engaging and always hanging in the ship in World War II or something like that, mm-hmm. It would be more logical to stay behind. For sure. But for a fighter, you want to get up there and point to the guy and say, "You did it, damn it!"
Yep, absolutely, and it carries a lot of weight with it. The next chapter is Nong Son. I'm not going to read the full thing, but the notes that I have say, "Welcome home to Anhua," the silent salute. So. We'll just pick it up right there. It's not that much. So, following Union 2, Fox Company's resolve had weakened in its moral fiber grew frail. Over 90 Marines from Fox Company had been either killed or wounded. Of the 64 others, many didn't report small wounds. Nevertheless, the battle had taken its toll on even those who had not been a casualty. Fox Company would have to rebuild. The reconstruction began the very next day. First Lieutenant James B. Scaurus was assigned to command Fox Company on the basis of his combat experience with Fox. Scaurus had been the 3rd platoon commander and the company executive officer until he was wounded for the second time in late March. During that period, he had earned 2 Silver Star medals for gallantry in combat. After March, he acted as the battalion's logistics officer. Scaurus joined the company on the battlefield 28 kilometers southwest of Anwa. The job seemed insurmountable. He was replacing one of the finest infantry captains in the Marine Corps, a man who had, on the previous day, sacrificed his own life for his men. Short, at 5'8", and prematurely bald, Scaurus did not possess Graham's classic commanding presence. Yet the men knew and respected him as a no-nonsense, tough Marine Corps leader who had been deeply devoted to their well-being. For them, he possessed everything that mattered. It was a relief to the men that Graham's replacement was a commander with a history in Fox. Flying in with Scaurus was Sergeant Richard Pappy Pinnell. He was weapons platoon commander. Sergeant Pinnell had joined Fox Company in late May, but had not gone into the field. He remained back at the base working on acclimating to the tropical heat, familiarizing himself with the use of personal weapons, and becoming otherwise indoctrinated in the war. With 6 years in the Corps, Pinnell carried the hardened physique and gravelly voice of a non-commissioned officer coming, most recently off the Paris Island drill field. Without knowing any of the specifics in his background, his voice garnered immediate respect from his peers and his seniors. His time spent in charge of the troops was instantly obvious. For the troops, however, his voice reminded them of their own DI. Even though they hadn't seen that drill instructor in the last 3 to 10 months, immediately it commanded their full attention. As the helicopter landed the mid-morning of 3 July on the sacred soil of the Union 2 battlefield, Scaurus and Pinnell began processing the full effect of the violence that took place the day before. Smoldering trees and other shredded vegetation told part of the tale. All else proved overwhelming. Troops scattered throughout the 1,000-meter square, dry rice paddy, silently placed their former compatriots, or whatever parts of them they could find, into body bags and searched for weapons and equipment. Before all the equipment could be collected, helicopters arrived at 1400 to lift Fox Company survivors back to Anwa. The men's minds remained locked on the battlefield, so no one anticipated a reception as they landed at the airstrip. Over 100 Marines and Corpsmen of Echo Company, Hotel Company, and the supporting elements gathered around the landing of the choppers. Silence greeted them. The muted salute bespoke of profound respect, most sincere admiration and love for their fellow Marine as the men of Anwa welcome back the heroes. And that's gotta be a sight. You know, you got the shit beat out of you. Most of your company's down. You're hurting. A lot of you are wounded, and then to see that's got to be something else.
Yeah,
There was a lot to that one.
There is indeed, and it gives. You recall we were talking about the size of the rifle companies, and the average size was about 120 out there in the field, and that didn't mean we have a whole bunch in the rear either, but that's all we had. And so when 90 get wounded or killed, there ain't many that are coming in on the helicopters, and those guys had just been out there with body bags. And it was a very traumatic experience for the survivors and the replacement guys that came in. There were replacement guys coming in, and I can remember one of our reunions, one of the guys said, if I had to pack another damn body in a bag, I think I'd just crack up, shoot myself. But they're packing all their buddies in a body bag, and how many? 30 of them. And so they're scattered all over, among the NVA dead too. So you're really walking in a probably 100, 150 guys. Turn them over to see if they're Marines. Yes, it was pretty bad. And so the mindset of those fellows that were coming off was not very high at that time, and you have to rebuild from scratch and all that.
And it's just such a different dynamic than what is faced today, and how things are handled today with our war. Of course, we're not losing the same numbers, and we don't have the same number of combat replacements coming in, but that dynamic of having sometimes more new guys than guys that you're even familiar with has got to be, that's got to be a challenge in itself.
Yeah,
especially with fighting, because once your elements shattered.
I'll tell you something. Now, again, I read your book and you read my book, and I'm a company commander. I'm thinking at that level, and you're thinking at the squad levels. Okay, so it's a little different analysis, and you can build on that. In other words, you lost your former commanding officer, and he ends up getting a Medal of Honor, and you lost Gunny Green's still there. And you got a couple other lieutenants coming in and stuff like that. And it doesn't matter if you were coming in, man. We could do that. We're going to build on this successes and the losses. We're going to start from there because we were told we were the best. So even though you're new, I can convince you're the best.
For sure.
Yep. And you'd sign up for it. You believe it or you don't believe it? Oh, I believe in it. Yeah, okay, yeah, good. Well, think that way. You see what I mean? I'm thinking at my level, and not just trying to get the guys and making sure that they have their shoe shine or bunks put away or something like that, or whatever it is. But it's a burden that has to be placed on company command. Now, I don't think you highlighted, but when I took over Fox Company, and that was in about July of '68, we had a few left over from Hue City, and we had mostly other replacement guys. And Fox, the day before, Fox lost a lot. And I can see them. And when you're looking at a guy who's kind of squared away, even though he's been there, and the guys who are not squared away, you kind of suspicious that they're not up to the speed you want, because you can't win battles if you don't have the meanest dog and the sharpest dog in the world. Yeah. So, and you probably read it in the book, but the first thing I did. We left Annois. We went on the main service road there, which was a 2-lane mud road type of thing. And I sped marched them out about 3 miles, and we did some training there. And then I sped marched them out. They were strung out on the way back, like 500 yards. And I told the gunny, I said, "Listen, you see what I got here? I don't want you to." And he was a Hue City guy too. And I don't want this to happen again. You get those guys in shape and you square them away. That's it. Left. Yeah. It is an NCO problem. It's not my problem. I'm supposed to be doing other things, but I'm telling him he's got a problem, and I'm counting on him to do it. And that's all he can say is, yes, sir, yes, sir, and things like that. But then we're all working on the same problem. How to make that better. Squared away. It's the ABCs of being a Marine. You be squared away. First in line, you're being early, you're looking at sharp and all that kind of stuff. You don't look messy or anything like that. So this is what happens when you're coming in and you get Scurious there. That's how you pronounce it, Jim Scurious.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
And he passed away already. He'd been to several reunions. And there's some funny stories. He was a lieutenant at one time.
For this, right? Or not?
In there, it's either he or somebody else. I'd have to. It's in there. Nah, it's probably someone else. Never mind. I'm not going to wander in my mind without looking in the book. So yeah. Anyway, he came in and he obviously carried on and that type of stuff. And let's see, that was probably in '67. Or something like that. When was that battle of?
Just before Hue, right?
No.
Worked up.
Oh no, Hue City was '68. There's nothing in '64. They got there in '66, I think. Yeah, '66. So
67 is what we're looking at here.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think it was late 67.
yeah. Yeah, 67 is the date coming
And
up.
then after that, they go up to the some kind of mines, the coal mines or something like that.
Rock crusher.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I got, what the next place? So I want to take a pause and just kind of talk about this. As a Marine, when you put your foot on the yellow footprints, at one of the recruit depots, your life changes. You're indoctrinated into that of the Marine Corps and of Marine Corps history and folklore and the things, the Marines that came before you that proved your name, let's say, and you learn about them. And Way City Marines are one of the stories that you're told from the very beginning, the house to house fighting and rooftop to rooftop. And until I read your book, I didn't understand the gravity of Way City. The job that you did, and I'm not going to cover it all. I will give you guys a brief snippet of a couple of pages here that kind of illustrate the fight that was Way City. But even as a Marine, hearing the folklore and hearing the traditions and hearing the stories, until I read this account, I did not know what Way City was. I did not know the size. I didn't, as far as, how not big or big you would consider it in that area. I didn't realize the amount of firepower, I suppose, that was rained down on people and the loss that was taken. And so we'll get into the book here, but this is a portion on Way City. Following this, we'll bring you in. I do have the part where you take over the platoon and we'll talk about, or the company, and we'll talk about, the same words. But into the book right now in the Way City, 1,600 hours. The men nodded and steadied themselves. Gasparini and Campbell slid into their corner facing Trancal Bond Street. Smitty's point man dashed across the intersection to the left side of the street and clung to the side of the home. These jungle and rice paddy Marines quickly surveyed the asphalt street lined with curbs and large shade trees. Immediately on the right side of the wall, ranging from 3 feet to 5 feet high, were used to delineate small Vietnamese property. A 10-foot wide sidewalk separated the trees from the walls. The beginning of the large building complexes that visually continued for 100 meters lined Smitty's left side of the street, 60 meters from the intersection. The men would soon know this property as is that Jean d'Arc High School?
Jean d'Arc.
Jean d'Arc High School, okay. The squads had crept more than 60 meters into the empty street when a hail of automatic weapons fire greeted them. Rounds ricocheted off the streets, walls, and buildings. Gasparini fell down behind a tree, wounded. Campbell dove over another small wall for cover. NVA rounds continued to pour into the courtyard walls. These men answered the well-hidden snipers by firing blindly back in their general direction. Brown pressed again to the back of one of the large trees, yelled, "Cece, you okay?" "Yeah." Jim Goslin, the platoon corpsman, having heard Gasparini was wounded, ran forward. The NVA strafed the right side of the street, killing him instantly. Private Stanley Murdoch, Brown's new radio operator, went down at the same time. Sergeant Smaley took a round to his leg and fell, needing assistance before he could move again. Brown cried out for the rest of the squad to lay down a base of fire in order to rescue the wounded Gasparini and Campbell. Any rescue attempt seemed hopeless. With no radio available for Brown, Horner and Brown communicated on the street. "Lieutenant, this isn't logical. We have to get the wounded," Brown shouted. "You get back up there with the lead fire team." "All right, sir." And with that, Brown raced down the street, and his helmet flying off of his head, rounds bouncing off the pavement at his feet, and he dove over the wall to reach Campbell. 2 more men were wounded watching Brown's back while he made his mad dash. Downs radioed Horner, urging him to move the platoon forward. Figueroa Perez, his Dear John letter, long forgotten, cut through the center of the block, through small homes, fences, and the backyards in an attempt to reach Campbell from a different direction. From a neighboring yard, Figueroa Perez shouted, "Brown, you over there?" "Yeah," Brown answered. "Don't come over here. We're pinned down." Figueroa Perez ignored the warning from his best friend, thinking only of making a rescue attempt as he leapt over the wall. A shot rang out, hitting him through the head, where he fell mortally wounded. Brown heard the chaplain's words in his head and thought, "Yeah, a mysterious ways." The rounds making Brown's squad an easy target were coming from the high school. Across the street, sliding along the school wall, Smitty and Della Riva Vera were making better progress. They had actually snuck halfway down the high school wall and were about to come under sniper fire. However, without the mutual support of Brown's pinned down squad, they were halted in position. At Downs' direction, Horter and Smitty attempted to come up with a different strategy at the end of the enemy's grip on the street. They broke into a house on Smitty's side of the street and determined that they could break through the interior walls and attack the enemy from inside instead of on the street. Their infantry weapons were useless. At 17:25 hours, the light gray clouds began to darken. Horner radioed the results to Downs. "Skipper, we're not making any progress. Browns has almost lost all of his men." All afternoon, Captain Downs had steadfastly drove his men to accomplish their mission. Now, torn between the inability to accomplish the mission and the need to care for his men, Captain Downs swore under his breath. Soon, the caring portion of his psyche responded, "All right, let's work it and get the men out of there." Out of nowhere, 2 M48 tanks crushed around the corner. Horner darted over to the lead tank, determined to relieve his casualties. He was focused on saving his men. Corporal Dave Collins, his radio operator, hightailed it with him. Horner opened the radio box at the rear of the tank. It didn't work. Collins climbed aboard the tank, asking for their freight. He turned off the company frequency in the radio and radioed the tank commander. After Horner sent his men to recover Smelly and Murdoch, both tanks began cranking forward together, forming a shield across the street, with Horner and Collins in trace. Horner put the right tank in lead. "Move 3 meters up, stop. Left tank, move 3 meters up, stop." 3 meters. The tanks provided a new threat. B-40 anti-tank rockets now exploded off the tank's armor, widely spraying shrapnel all over the on the meager protection being used by the men that were trapped in squads. In the first B-40 salvo, Horner was hit on the left hand on the arm side. He bled profusely, but not enough to stop him in the rescue mission. Horner bellowed out the Smitty squad on the left to fall behind the tanks. Collins, who had reluctantly left Brown's squad to become Horner's radio operator after Horner lost his operator, caught the spirit of being a go-get-'em grunt, again yelled over to Brown's trapped men, "We're coming!" Deafening the sounds of battle raging on the street, rounds ricocheting off the pavement, rockets exploding off the tank, and men shouting to and fro drowned out everything else for the men of Fox. Holding the radio handset while talking to the tanker, Horner was staring into the eyes of Collins when a sniper's round passed through Collins' neck. Killed instantly, he fell onto the street off the tank's protective shield. Lance Corporal Jimmy Palmo, witnessing his buddy's death, dashed over to the tank. Looking at the lieutenant, Palmo said, "I'll take the radio." Together they pulled Collins' fallen body and stripped off his Prick 25 radio. 20 meters passed. The armor shield had collected 8 Marines from the 2nd platoon. 2 were walking wounded. Private First Class Henschel's body was placed on the tank's hull. The street darkened at night as night approached, impeding the vision of the snipers and the enemy rocket men. Soon the forward men in Smitty's squad had been collected. Smitty told Horner and Private First Class Della Vera, who had been laying in the street motionless for over an hour, was also forward of them. Pinned into their flattened positions on the street, Brown and Campbell lay low. Rounds zinged over their heads on regular intervals, missing them by mere inches. As the minutes passed and light faded, the attacks lessened. Campbell shrugged himself even lower. He twisted his body until he was able to reach his pack of cigarettes from his pants pocket. Campbell slid his hand in, carrying the nearly fully pack over his chest. He shook the cigarette out of the pack, squeezed it with his fingers, and slithered it between his lips. Campbell repeated the process to retrieve the lighter from his other pocket. He peered sideways at Brown, who had used his peripheral vision to watch the entire process. Campbell hesitated before lighting the cigarette. Every Marine knew you didn't light a match or lighter, at least give away your position. Both men cringed and squeezed their eyes shut as concrete bits and dust sprayed around them. Bullets trapped them in the prone position as the snipers continued to chirp away at the 3-foot wall they were behind. Campbell offered to Brown a lopsided smile, cigarette flopping between his lips. "I guess it's not like they don't already know our position," he said. Brown responded with a small chuckle. "Guess not." Campbell took his time, lit the cigarette, and savored the first long drag. He tossed the pack onto Brown, who tapped another cigarette out, eventually getting it to stick in his mouth. After Brown's was lit, Campbell stuffed the cigarettes and lighter back into his pants. In the distance, they heard the approach of tanks. They could hear the shouts of fellow Marines. "Fall behind the tanks! We're coming! Hold on!" Brown braved to peek over the wall, stretching his spine until his neck until he was almost doing a horizontal headstand. He released his position and fell back into place as another round buzzed around him, missing him by the smallest margin. Campbell and Brown knew they would have to run for it, even though the enemy had their positions made. "Not yet," he breathed. "You know what I heard, man?" Campbell asked. "What?" Brown asked. "It was one of those classes we had to take about smoking, remember?" Campbell continued. "Yeah, something about Marines and pot," Brown responded. "But they also said something about cigarettes," Campbell shrugged, flipping his hand and that held the cigarette towards Brown. "They said, according to the Surgeon General, these things can kill you." "Nah," Brown stated. "Cigarettes?" "Yeah," Campbell hurried. "The doc recommended we quit smoking them." Brown's ears perked as the tank got closer. "Why?" he asked, prepping himself to jump and run. "Seems they don't want us dying to anything dangerous," Campbell laughed, flicking the remains of his cigarette aside. "No kidding," Brown said. "And you thought the Corps didn't care," Campbell accused. "Yeah, Campbell." "Go," Brown shouted. With that, Campbell led, and the men hurled themselves over the ground and over the protective wall. Bullets impacted all around them as they sprinted towards the tanks. Pieces of the street kicked up at them, but Brown and Campbell reached the safety of the armor shield. Gasparini joined them, and all living Marines were collected. The dead were placed on tank hulls, weapons and equipment were retrieved. And then it continues on in the book in very good detail, the Hue City battle as it was, from when they said house to house and street to street, you have an idea. And then when you read this, you realize they're having to use rockets to blow holes in walls because every other entrance, was covered dynamically with an entrenched in weapon and several people waiting. And that is a fight. That is a fight.
Yeah, I know. It's helpful. The book has a street map in there, and it's helpful to see how when we describe it, how small it is. There's a pavement on either side, but the street's only 2 cars wide. And on the, as they were moving forward, the MACV compound was behind there. That's the military assistance training command. It was behind there, and so they went around the corner. That's when everything happened. But as they got around the corner and to go down that street, on the left-hand side was a 2 or 3 story university. It was a University of Hue City was over there. So those guys had all these windows and bricks and stuff like that to shoot at these Marines coming down the street. The other note is Rich Horner, the lieutenant, was there. Do you recall when I was talking about one battle in Union 2 where they were in the rice paddies and all that? Okay, next day, then Tiffany and I are talking to the Hue City guys, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's a completely different environment, but we have to kind of understand what the hell's going on. Mm-hmm. So we have a good 20 guys there, I would imagine. And Downs comes in. Now, when the general comes in, he was the company commander. I mean, he still goes by Sir. I go by Dave. There's a difference. Nobody calls him Mike. Maybe 1 or 2 Matsu, but it's a difference. So these guys are telling this story, and we're recording it and taking notes and things like that. These are the C.C. Campbell, Cigarette Brown, the guy who I said got all our alumni list built. He focused on that. And of course, I got to tell you about C.C. Campbell. He's now passed, but he's gone to the first 10 or so, that's over 20 years, reunion. He's a little guy. And now, back in the time when I've got the company and we get napalmed, okay, he loses an ear. Yeah. So his whole area on one side is now smeared. He's the one with the cigarettes playing about, but in reality, he ended up for 40 years or so with half his head scarred up and all that kind of stuff. And So these are the players, and all gathered in the same room. And Downs comes in. So he's listening for a while. And he said, no, it didn't work that way. They shot him down so bad he had to leave in this little room. Yeah. And that's why he doesn't get too much involved. There was I like Mike a lot, okay? I remember, if I met his wife, I don't remember it. Julie my wife comes to all our reunions and all that kind of stuff. Tiffany comes, not so much anymore. But he had to leave because no one would agree with him. Only Horner and those guys. So I know Rich Horner pretty well. He's gone to, he's flown from the West Coast and then joined up with Julie and I. And then he and his wife and Julie and I went up together to Gettysburg where we had a reunion. So at any rate, this is a close rapport. And again, it's one of those type of things where you're in combat and you know that. So much is going on. One guy's thinking one thing, and the other guy's like this. So much is going on at the same time that it's hard to make a nice continuity story. So this was another one of these meetings that we had in the basement of the hotel in Reno to try to get our hands around what was going on. And so that deal with a health and what is called the Secretary of Health about no smoking and things how dangerous it is for you.
Surgeon General.
That's him. And I picked that up about maybe 4 months before, meaning looking at all the monthly before Hue City, we were still building up in Anwa. And I wasn't there, but the after action reports were there. And that's one of the classes that was given was on smoking and health and this kind of stuff. So I added that. Yeah. So when you're writing a book, I wasn't there. Those guys that don't remember anything, and they didn't. I added that little vignette there.
Yeah.
So when I write, I do a creative nonfiction, if I will, because no one can remember what they said. Well, yeah, that's exactly what I said. These guys would say when they read the book.
Yeah.
Why'd you call it a fiction? Someone gives me a red ass because I called it a fiction. But in reality, there's a new category of books, and it's called creative nonfiction. And I think nonfictions sell better than fictions. So I think either I'm going to go all nonfiction with this this one that I'm just about finished with. But anyway, they were off the subject. And
Louisiana Gun Shop, your firearm headquarters, specializing in concealed carry guns, ammo, and training. You can get your Louisiana permit with us. Also a large selection of AR-15s, or if you are that build-it-yourself type of guy or gal, we have all the parts to build and customize your own AR-15. Glock, SIG, Taurus, Ruger. We have all the brands, both in the store or at LouisianaGunShop.com.
Not too far. You're marking a building. Hit him. Yeah, that's good.
That's a good shot. That's money.